Hey, everybody. This is Michelle.
And this is her sidekick, Julie. Yeah. Coming to you from our Emerald City, Seattle, Washington, our favorite place on the planet.
Is it?
Yes.
I mean, we live here, so it should be.
Yeah. Except I was in Arizona this week, and that 85-degree weather was rather appealing.
I'm sure it was so appealing.
The pool, the water.
And we get 60, like in Seattle today, it's like 60 degrees, maybe a little bit more than that.
Yeah, and I was outside with like a tank top on.
Yeah, it's really nice day. I'm feeling like I need to wash my car.
Yeah,
and
maybe
clean it.
when we're finished.
Yeah,
we can
do some hard work.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to be here with you today.
I'm so happy to be here with you.
And this is going to be kind of an interesting episode.
It is.
Yeah. We talked about doing this episode around Mother's Day, so it's actually very appropriate. And in a couple of episodes prior, I know we had talked or mentioned about my firstborn, Zachary, and that he had died when he was a little baby. And so this is the first time actually that I will have memorialized this, if you will, all these years later. And I just thought it was kind of a cool thing for us to talk about, because I know there are people out there that have experienced loss of a child specifically. Loss in general is obviously horrible, but loss of a child in particular is kind of a different topic altogether. So anyway, I'm at that place now in my life where I can really talk about this and give some color, if you will, some details around it, and really kind of help people understand if you're running across someone in your life who is experiencing this type of a loss, or if you yourself are, there are definitely things that you can do or say, more do, I think, that can make a big difference for people. And I'll share a little bit about some of the things that I remember that kind of make me laugh a little bit too. It's all a little bit of a blur, really, those first few weeks, especially. So I'll just get started. We'd gotten married, and about, I don't know, I think I was 26 or so after that. So a couple of years later, I remember being at work and seeing some ladies with their babies in the baby carriage. And all of a sudden, it was like an all of a sudden thing. All of a sudden I've got like baby fever, and I'm thinking, oh, that might be time for something like that,
Did you guys talk about, prior to getting married, did you talk about if and when you were going to have a family?
Oh yeah. We had intended to have a family. We didn't really have a plan to speak of. It was more kind of like, when you're ready,
right,
sort of a thing. And jobs being established and things of that nature. I think we were in a house at that point. We had bought our first house, and so the timing was actually pretty good.
The baby fever was setting in. And
what's really funny is I think back on a lot of this, and you have this expectation, when you're going through your getting married, getting your house, like all these steps, that I was just mentioning, and nobody really anticipates that you're going to have any issues or problems.
Right.
No. And I was happy as a little clam. I was so happy. I was like a roly-poly little happy girl, practically ate way too much ice cream and bacon and all kinds of things. I didn't care. I was just, whatever. I think I remember being at the hospital for us. It was not an emergency C-section, but a C-section, because he was breech. And they put me on the scale, and I'm like, I almost started crying because I almost weighed as much as my husband did. And he was really always so good about never obviously anything. He was really very good about all that stuff. But
pro tip there, dads.
Pro tip. Yeah. I was like a weeble, when you wobble, but you don't fall down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not one of those women that you could not tell they were pregnant from behind, But so, I was thrilled.
Normal pregnancy?
Yeah. Pretty normal pregnancy. He was footling breech. So one foot was down and one foot was up, and they tried to turn him, which really hurt right before, and it wasn't working. So I ended up with an emergency.
Okay.
I mean, why do I keep saying emergency? I ended up with a C-section.
Well, emergency C-section. That's like if you weren't planning on doing that, obviously, right? So then it's like, whoop.
We like literally picked the day and time.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Because we needed to do that before I went into labor.
Let me just say really quick too, Julie and I have been friends for a long time, but this really is the first time I've heard this story. Yeah. So I'm going to be asking questions. Y'all are probably thinking, why is she asking? She probably already knows, but I really don't.
Yeah. There's a few people that definitely have the down low on all of the details, and we'll talk about that a little bit, kind of prefacing all of that everybody grieves so differently. Yeah. And how people handle things isn't always necessarily the same.
Right.
But anyway, so kind of going into this, it was a pick a day and time, had the baby, everybody's happy, you get home, you're going through all of the things that you go through as a new parent, no sleep, etc. And I remember one night when Zachary, he was so cute. He had like all of this hair and he looked like he had a little bit of Peruvian blood in him, which is kind of cute, but just had this head of hair that you would not believe. And I was wondering if maybe that was why I had such bad heartburn right before he was born. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of an old wives' tale, but oh my God, it was bad. And so I'd have like toast. That was all I could really eat. I remember at that, well, except the ice cream, obviously I mentioned. Anyway, so, kind of doing this thing, Brian was working, I want to say he was working like a mid shift. So I was home by myself a lot with the baby, and I went back to work after 3 months. And at that 3-month mark, he was sleeping through the night. Really. And so there were a couple, I don't, yeah, he was sleeping through the night. He was quite a sleeper. And we were just in that la la land that you're in when you have a new baby and you're not getting a lot of sleep and things are kind of starting to settle in and everything. But I remember one night in particular, right before he died, that I could not console him. Now I know that happens with a lot of babies, but it could have something to do with what happened. I don't know. There's so many question marks, but I literally was up all night trying to console that little guy and just trying to, I don't know whatever was wrong, but finally in the morning was able to, he was probably just so exhausted from crying, that he went to sleep and everything was fine. But I just remember that so specifically because it was like within a day or two of when he passed away. Oh. And so I don't know, was something going on. You just don't know,
you
right?
You don't know. Yeah.
So I had been back to work for a while, about a month, not quite a month. And when I was on my way to my car, I got in a car accident coming home to work. So I was by myself, but my car was totaled. And so I was okay. Everything was fine. But on Valentine's Day, and Zachary was just a day or two shy of 4 months old, we had to go out and find a new car. And so he was with the lady who was watching him, the daycare lady that was watching him that day so we could go out and look for the car. And we found a car and we decided not to take him with us because it would have just been in and out of cars. Right. I just didn't think it was a good idea. So we had plans to go out that evening with like 3 other couples or something. And this was taking a long time. But anyway, we ended up getting back there was no cell phones or anything either. So keep that in mind. We got back to her house, which was right by our house. And when we pulled into the cul-de-sac, you could see aid cars and the lights going and like a medic car and things and people that were there that I didn't know. And my heart just sunk. And it was a cul-de-sac, right? So it's like there were a lot of people out there. My heart just sunk. I was like, what's going on? So I got out and Brian got out of the car and went up there and we found out right there, he was gone. He was just gone. And he had died during his nap. And so back when this was going on, this was 1991, there was no information really at all out about SIDS or any kind of prevention methods for SIDS. So as I was, and Michelle, you probably were too, we were all tummy sleepers, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All my kids had been tummy sleepers. Or what am I saying? All my kids. He was my first kid. We were tummy sleepers. So we were, right. That's how we were taught, right?
Yep.
And so he was on his stomach and he was in a little area upstairs and we're thinking it was about 4:15 in the afternoon and he was just gone. It's the most surreal thing to think about because there's really nothing that we could have done differently. And so much of the research that we had done afterward, of course, made us understand that if a child dies of SIDS, which is sudden infant death syndrome, it means that they can't really identify any other alternative. And so the baby just kind of stops breathing. It's something to do with some kind of mechanism in their brain. I mean, it goes back to the biblical times when it's even in the Bible, like the lady wakes up and her baby's asleep kind of a thing. But what we did learn within a couple of weeks of that was that had been all these studies and there was a bunch of information that came out on sleep position. And so the new thing was that a child should be slept on their side or their back. And of course, just like anything else, you don't want a bunch of fuzzy things around their face or anything like that. So there was this study or research, I should say, that was happening that was indicating that a child was overheating and on their stomach, they were maybe rebreathing some of the air that they had exhaled. And that was part of it. Nobody really knew. Mm-hmm. So it's like, you kind of have no answers.
Right.
And naturally speaking, you don't have answers for things. So you kind of start coming up with the answers,
Sure.
on your own, or kind of try coming up with alternatives or things. We were so lost. We were 26 and 27 years old. And what I found was I was out of work for about a month after that. And I remember my store manager calling and just kind of checking on me. I needed to come back, clearly. I'd been gone for 3 months, back for a month, gone for another month. And I did not want to go back to work, but I knew that it was probably the best thing for me, because I really it wasn't really healthy to be sitting around the house. And, my husband grieved so much differently than I did. I found I needed to be around people, and my friends in particular, and just to talk. And of course we smoked, and we drank a lot of coffee, and we were up till hours in the morning and that sort of thing. Brian literally slept all the time. It was completely the opposite. And the curtains were drawn, and it was dark inside and stuff. That's the way he wanted it, and that's what he wanted to do. And God love him, that was how he was trying to handle things, and I, on the other hand, was handling it differently. So that people who lose children, 90-something% of people married that lose children don't make it. And so this is probably part of the reason why, because nobody really talks about, when you have children, if you lose one, this is what happens. It's not like, it's kind of like the discussions you don't have about how to manage being married. It's like you
don't prepare for the worst things.
No.
You always, yeah.
And I think I was very innocent about a lot of that, because I just assumed, that of course everything is going to be okay. Why wouldn't it be okay? Why wouldn't he be okay? Why wouldn't he wake up? I mean, never even occurred to me that it would be an issue at all. And so given that he was the firstborn grandchild and the firstborn child in our family, obviously it was traumatic for a lot of different people. Of course, my parents and, Brian's parents and our siblings and everything, they're kind of really not knowing what to do or how to handle things. And so, their natural instincts are to smother my side of the family anyway, my mom and stuff. A natural instinct was definitely to smother. And I literally could not handle it at all. I couldn't be around her. I didn't want to be around her. No shade to my mom. She did everything she could to try to make me feel better, but I did not. I felt suffocated, and I just wanted to be left alone, or left alone to do what I wanted to do. And I remember very specifically, this was kind of a real pivotal point in the relationship Brian had with my family, that my dad had pulled him into the garage. And this was within the same day or the day after that Zach had died, and said, you need to be strong for my daughter. You need to be taking care of my daughter and be strong for my daughter. And of course, I didn't even know anything that had happened or anything, but he told me later, and he was so offended by that and so angry about it. And he carried it with him. He still does, probably. And what I see is that my dad was obviously hurting and didn't have any way to really help me. And, Brian's my husband, so obviously he's going to say, you take care of her, kind of a thing. But what I think he hadn't really taken into account was that Brian was grieving too. Yeah. I mean, he was obviously devastated. And with the work that he does and everything, it's like you have to be on point, with what you're doing. So he couldn't focus. It was just,
That's a lot.
Well, a lot of the attention was on me.
Yeah.
Like, I think people were more worried about me because I'm the one that gave birth to the child and all this kind of stuff. And people kind of forget that, okay, he's a dad and he was an actively involved father with this baby.
Yeah.
And, Zachary was only 4 months old, but it was, he was really actively involved with him and took time off and everything. So it wasn't like, I mean, obviously any parent's going to be upset, but just to hear that from someone, that you respect or care about, and obviously didn't say anything about it. He carried that with him, or like I said, he probably still does. And I totally understand. I think I would have felt the same way. I probably would have talked about it, said something about it later, but never did. Just carried that resentment around. And you could see how that, had impacted the relationship that they had afterward. And it just made things more tense, I think, even more tense. And that's kind of another topic altogether, but definitely had a detrimental effect on the family relations, I would say. So anyway.
So that's okay. When you got there, was any other family there? Because I know you said, I just want to bring back, there were no cell phones.
No.
So when you arrived, it was literally just on the scene,
yes.
Right?
Yeah. When I got there, I just remember the aid cars, and I remember just like curling up in a ball on the front lawn, you know, and I don't really remember anything about the rest of the inside or anything like that. Just had gone home, and I know that there
didn't know if they were able to contact any other family, or if you know, obviously they couldn't because you guys were out looking for a car, but
no, there was nothing. We had no contact. It was kind of, I mean, for all I knew, it could have been someone else, or someone could have fallen. I didn't know until we got in the door, and you could just see the look on that lady's face.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it was pretty.
I used to watch kids. I used to, you know.
Can you imagine? I mean, having a child in your care and something like that happened. So from there, they did an autopsy, and he died of SIDS. And I remember that the house was just packed with people, and people bringing food, so much food. There was just so much food, and chocolate chip cookies. I remember the chocolate chip cookies, of course. And I was tiny, you know, so, but it's like, I mean, I was like mowing down these chocolate chip cookies. I just remember that. And things people would say because they just didn't know what to say.
I was just going to say that's
Yeah, I remember this one gal that worked with Brian. Really, I knew her. She's a nice gal. She came over and brought food, and she came to the door, and I had answered the door, and she says, "I don't want to disturb you, but I just wanted to bring you guys, you know, a dinner or something like that. And I'm so sorry." And it's like, you know, don't worry, you can have another one.
Oh.
And you know, and I remember looking at her and going,
goodness.
Well, she didn't mean anything bad,
I know.
But at the time, I just looked at her and was like, I didn't even know what to say, you know, because it was just such an insensitive thing to say. But I mean, of course, I chat with her now even still. And it's like, I don't obviously hold anything like that against her. People just don't know what to say.
Yeah.
They truly do not know what to do or what to say. And I think the most important thing to remember is that you don't have to really say anything. You just have to be there for people. You just have to, you know, you hear people say, if there's anything that I can do, it's like they usually aren't going to call you.
Right.
You know, sometimes you just have to take the initiative and just do things and make things happen. So anyway, I do remember that there were just a lot of people there, and Brian would retreat and just go into the bedroom and shut the door and just be alone. He just, you know, he couldn't handle being around all the people. And so I'd be entertaining. And his folks and family, all except one brother, flew in, and we had the funeral at the Catholic church where he had been baptized, and he had just been baptized. He was the only one that wasn't baptized on Easter because his birthday was in the fall. And just what I remember from the service, that song that was by Eric Clapton, the Tears in Heaven song, couldn't be played during the service because it was a Catholic service. So it was played beforehand. We wanted that one played. And then I just have this memory of Brian carrying his little casket, and we walked from the vestibule area up together, and he had the little casket in his arms and brought the little casket up and set it down. And then we had like a regular like Catholic mass and everything. And there were so many people there. It was people I didn't really even know, probably friends of Brian's or, you know, or vice versa. There's just a lot of people there. And there was like a little gathering afterward. And I remember like worrying about people feeling comfortable. That was something I remember thinking about, which now I'm kind of like, they're probably worried about me being comfortable. But I was cracking jokes and things like that, just random things that you would not expect. And it wasn't like I was in a good mood or anything like that. I was just so out of sorts and not really knowing what to do and trying to be strong, you know, and keep my head on straight and all that kind of stuff, that I did the best I could, you know. But I remember one of the first phone calls that I had made was to Mary, and she at the time lived in Spokane, and that girl told her boss, I'm out, and dropped what she was doing, brought her Leah, who was little one. She was 2 or 3 at the time. She's now in her 30s. So, over and she stayed with, Mary's mom and dad. And she was with me the entire week. She stayed the entire week, and she stayed up with me at night and until I would go to sleep. And she didn't try to make me go to sleep. She just sat there and we talked and she listened and we smoked. We used to, you know, we were kind of into that chain smoking thing at that time. And like we were up till 4 a.m. every day. And then when it was time to go to sleep, I could finally go to sleep. Then we went to sleep. She went into one of the rooms and I just went to sleep up in my room. And I remember her helping me find something to wear. Like I had to go find something to wear to the funeral, you know, that kind of thing. And she just took care of shit. She just took care of things. So there were a couple people that were like that. And my Nordstrom family, my friends from Nordstrom were amazing. My whole team was amazing. I mean, these people were really pretty cool. I mean,
Yeah.
they just really wrapped kind of their arms around me and helped me just in any way they could. And it was pretty amazing. I do remember about 2 weeks after having lunch with one of the people in my family, I won't say which one, and it was 2 weeks. I remember that, and just very gently saying to me, you need to move on. You got to let go. You need to move on. And I remember that conversation because I was looking at them going, are you fucking kidding me?
That's what I'm sitting here thinking.
Well, again, kind of like people, when they don't know what to do and they're uncomfortable, they want things to be normal. They want things to get back to normal where they're not feeling uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And my level of comfort or uncomfortableness probably impacted their level of uncomfortableness. It's not that they were being selfish, but it's funny now I look back on those things, and at that time I was like, are you serious? But now I get it. It's like I've obviously processed things over the years, and they just wanted me to be okay.
Right.
And so how it comes across obviously sounds maybe a little bit more callous than that, but that's not what was intended by any means. These are people that really loved and cared for us. So anyway, I do remember that person's in my life still. And I totally realized that wasn't a bad thing to say. It was just, they were wanting things to get back to normal, So let's see.
Do you think maybe you were talking about how you were behaving at the funeral, really out of sorts? And it sounds like maybe subconsciously you were just wanting to act normal.
I was truly wanting to act normal. I remember even like going to the gym, like the next day. Mm-hmm. I think it was the next day going to the gym. And I think Mary went to the gym. We went to this place. It's not there anymore, but it was the gym we went to. And I'm on the elliptical or something going, I'm going to work out. I'm going to do everything I normally do. And I literally lasted like 5 minutes, and I just sat on the mat and started crying.
I was going to say, yeah.
And so then we all just sat on the mat and crying together, at the gym. I'm like, maybe I shouldn't be here. You're trying to make things as normal as you can, but it's just not going to happen,
right.
So from the funeral, we had this procession. This was kind of cool. I don't know how this all worked out or who did it all, but the bike squad, the motorcycle squad for the Seattle PD had their whole motorcycle squad there. And they did the whole thing from the church all the way in Bothell, all the way to where Babyland, where he was buried and put to rest in Seattle. And we were in the car. I remember being in I think it was like a limousine or whatever, like one of those hearse things. And these guys on these motorcycles were it just absolutely made me feel so good to see the support that they were providing. And they all stick together. I mean, those guys all stick together and they watch out for each other and everything. And this is kind of one of those ways, so I was really proud to see the amount of support, that they provided. And it was a long ways from the church to where the cemetery was too. So it was kind of a long procession that they were trying to block things off for, I remember, and everything. So anyway, when the funeral and everything was over, it was 5 days later. So he died on Valentine's Day, which obviously hasn't been the best day. I look at it differently now. I'll talk about that in a minute. But at the time, just that day would come and go, and it would just be like a very dark day. Andrew came 1 year and 1 week later. So I think it was 15 months after. But I remember the Valentine's Day, I was having contractions, and I'm like,
oh goodness,
you cannot come. And it was a week later, and he was an emergency C-section. So that's probably where I was getting that in my head. With grief support for losing a child, we were paired through the SIDS Foundation with this couple that actually they were a few years older than me, and they had gone to the same high school. And so we became really, really good friends with them. And their firstborn had died 3 years, I think, or 4 years before Zachary. And his name was Drew. So when we had Andrew, he was named after their little guy.
Okay.
Yeah, it was kind of cool.
Yeah.
We had him, Andrew, and he was Drew when he was little. He was called Drew when he was little, but he's obviously goes by Andrew more now. So, but they were wonderful. They provided a tremendous amount of support. And I remember when I was getting ready to have Andrew and Amy, the girl, I was just freaking out. And I remember being at my house and I was freaking out, and it was Valentine's Day. And I was like, I can't have him. I'm scared. I'm going to lose him. I mean, I was just
I was going to say, was that terrifying? It had to have been terrifying.
It was
truly.
It was absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
Well, we almost lost him in in the birth. So that's a whole nother thing because he was an emergency. And of course, everything went fine because he's here and he's fine. But I remember her looking me straight in the face, in my eyes, and saying, I promise you, he's not going to die. I promise you. And I remember looking at her and going and just hanging on every single word that she said, because I was like, I've got to believe that's true.
Yeah.
Because I can't believe otherwise.
Right.
And so I just tried to just focus on that, focus on that. And that poor kid, I'm telling you, when he came, he was being smothered.
I'm sure.
I remember my mom, he's the light that lit up the darkness, just all this kind of stuff, and he was like, there were very high expectations for him, which he's kind of carried on. I think it was an unfortunate place to be a subsequent sibling, to something like that, because how do you compete with that,
Right.
And you shouldn't have to. But yeah, it was, if this hadn't happened, Andrew wouldn't be here, because there's no way I would have had those children so close together. I was like, I didn't really love being pregnant in the first place.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was kind of just, I digress there a little bit, but I remember I did try counseling. Brian did not want to go to counseling. I felt like I needed to do something. I had to talk to somebody. I had to deal with this. And so I started going to these grief support groups. He might have gone one time, but he didn't want to go. And so I just went by myself. It's kind of like a lot of things that we started to do were very much by ourselves, independent.
I was going to say you did both process very differently.
Yep.
Did you have many conversations together, just the two of you, about any of?
Yeah. I mean, I think moreover, it was, he wanted to be able to grieve his own way. And it's like, I didn't understand, I thought that he was kind of pulling away because, but he was, which he was in a lot of ways, but it was more because he just didn't have anything to give. He was just, destroyed.
Yeah.
Really.
Empty, probably.
Yeah. Very empty. And, he threw himself into work and all of that. So when Andrew came, it was, it was a real celebration, but at the same time, it was very bittersweet because we knew what we had. We honestly, and this is going to sound kind of strange, but hopefully you'll understand. I didn't realize it at the time, but I think I kind of took it for granted. I took for granted that, of course I have a child. Of course he's going to be healthy. Of course he's going to grow up and be fine. Of course I'm not going to have, really just when I say naive, it's like, I just assumed that everything would be okay. So I wonder, and I'll talk about that a little later, what lessons I was supposed to be learning from all of that. I don't know if Brian felt the same way about that or not. He did not talk about it a lot. And I found throughout the years when there's other issues that have come up, we always circle back to this because, like I said, everybody grieves differently, but you have to be you can't go around grief. It's going to stay there until you address it, till you deal with it, till you talk about it. And some people never do, but it's usually a barrier to being able to express yourself in other ways when you have grief that's unresolved. And so that coupled with some other things that you see, with the work and all that kind of stuff, you can see how, how that became kind of a clog in the wheel, so to speak, where it's like you just weren't able to, he just wasn't dealing with it in the same way, which is moving on, but really it was still all there. Not to say that it wasn't for me, it definitely was, but my way of handling was different. I went to see a counselor. I went to the grief support groups. I started helping other families that had lost their children to SIDS, like being a grief companion but it was just me. So Brian wasn't really wanting to do that. And a lot of those things were couple related things.
I was going to say, is that what the other couple that you were talking about? Is that what they were doing for you?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. And when I was saying they became close, they really did become close. Brian and the husband, they had a great time together, and Amy and I had a great time together. We all four really got along really well. And they had two little girls, that they had since their little guy was when he died of SIDS. Yeah. I think that the time frame, when you were asking before about did we talk about it, we did. I think the one thing that we really agreed upon was this big gaping empty hole that we felt from having been parents and then not being parents anymore. And we loved being parents. We loved having a child. We just loved the whole experience, not the dying part, but all of the stuff that went along with it. So we decided to try again. And so I got pregnant pretty quickly, within maybe 2 months or something like that. But it wasn't, I remember when I knew I was pregnant, I just bawled my head off. I just bawled because I was just like, wow. Because it took a while, it took a good year to get pregnant with Zachary, and didn't have any problem with any of the others. Not that was a problem. It was just more, I was probably stressed about it and that sort of thing. And so I was very much in a fog the vast majority of the pregnancy.
With Andrew.
Oh yeah. I don't remember a lot of it at all. I don't remember a ton of it at all. I was still grieving very, very much and eating a lot of ice cream.
And bacon?
No bacon on that one. Just the ice cream. I'm telling you, I was depressed too.
Yeah.
I was depressed, but I was scared. And, you just add in all of the other emotions. Yeah. It's a lot. And, on the outside, I'm trying to be normal. Quote, and I'm putting that in quotes because what is normal, right?
Yeah.
It's like, but on the inside, I was terrified, absolutely terrified. So I was trying to do things to help myself be stronger. And so that's where some of the grief companion stuff came in, or being able to, like I spoke at different support groups and stuff at children's, and just did what I just tried,
Sure.
But I remember going to the counselor the first time I left work. And of course, when you work at Nordstrom, I think my counseling appointment was like 6:00 at Northgate, and I had to leave by 5:15 to get there, on time. And that was viewed as leaving early.
Right.
And I remember getting a call from my team. One person on my team just panicked because something had happened and they needed me, and we need you to be here. And I'm like, and I remember saying, you need to figure this out. I'm not going to be there. I was so like, I didn't have anything to give. I was like, let the assistant handle it. I'm like literally just coming out of a counseling session where I'm exhausted from crying, and the counselor was horrible. That one that I went to, she just sat there. She was just like this older lady, and she just kind of sat there and just listened. I mean, obviously it was the first time, but I just walked out of there going, what the heck? I don't think
what was that?
Yeah, that didn't help at all. Really. I never went back to her. And I did try probably a couple of others at that point, but I think having the grief support people, the Amy and Mike, was probably one of the saving graces for me, because they were just there. There was no conditions. They were just there, and they'd been through it. And I think that's what Brian needed too. I mean, we had to kind of force him to go, but once he kind of got out and was able to spend time with them and talk and stuff, he really did enjoy spending time with them. And I think it gave him some peace at the time. So
many things that we try to get through on our own. I'm just listening to you having that support couple, and I'm thinking of people with addiction and different things, and all the programs. They have sponsors and people that are there for them that have been through the same, which I think, to your point, is really key.
Yeah, I think you can have lots of different support from people in different ways. But what I found was someone who had the same experience that I did.
Yes.
Had a better understanding of what I was going through.
Yes.
It's not to say that my close friends weren't there for me. They were totally there for me. And, in the best way they could, because they didn't know what to do either. But it gave me solace, definitely, having those two. It's funny how people come into your life at different times for different reasons. And, those relationships have since faded, and no shade to either one of them. They're great people. It's just, I think we were in their lives and they were in our lives for a specific reason, a specific period of time. Yeah. And, since then they have gotten divorced, and she's remarried and has twins, and he's remarried and has another one. And so we don't see them or talk to them or anything anymore.
Yeah.
But I'm very grateful to them for, what they did for us.
Yeah.
So, it's funny because you can be very angry. And I think that, when you're going through the grief process, it's a very delicate process, but it's one that you have to go through to come out on the other side. And one of the stages, obviously, is anger. And, being raised Catholic and, being a part of the Catholic Church and all that kind of stuff, I was flipping angry. I just was like, how could something like this even happen? I couldn't understand it. And Brian was pretty angry too, to the point where he just was like, not even going to have it. He didn't want to have anything to do with it. And, I remember talking to the priest when we were getting everything ready for the funeral, and he's obviously never had any kids. He's counseled different people and stuff like that. I do remember asking him if the baby was in like purgatory, or where would the baby be? Is the baby in a loving light? Is he okay? I mean, these are really like odd questions probably to some other person because they're very intangible. But I remember him telling me, he goes, your baby was a sweet, innocent little boy. You don't need to worry about original sin or any of that kind of stuff because he's in heaven. He's in heaven. He's going to be fine. He's okay. Mm-hmm. And just looking at him going, okay, I believe you.
Yeah.
And I do truly believe that's the case. I really do.
Oh, and absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, kind of going back to all these years later, the things that you kind of learn, I went back and I did a lot of research because I just need to understand, I need to have a better understanding in order to be able to accept things, because I just wasn't going to accept something at face value. Like that's the way it is. That wasn't going to work for me at all. And so, the research that I did do, and a lot of this still holds true today, is that children who are, nobody really knows why a child would be prone to this. They still don't know. After all of these years and everything, they still don't know, but they do know how to reduce the rate of SIDS by some of the things that you're able to do with their sleep position and the overheating and all that kind of stuff. But the babies anywhere from 1 month to 1 year of age can die unexpectedly, and that would be a sudden infant death syndrome. After 12 months of age, at the time, it was sudden unexpected death syndrome. So it was not the same thing because of the age, but it was really the same thing. And a friend of mine actually that worked at Nordstrom, her little one died. I think she was 14 months old or something. Same thing, just completely found her the same way. And I know that really was a detriment and really hard on her family too. I don't think she's married anymore to the same person. But the key time frame is between 2 and 4 months, and under 6 months is when the highest percentages are. But between 2 and 4 months, it's like 90%. That's when 90% of them occur. Yeah, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Also that it happens more in boys than in girls.
Interesting.
Yeah, like 60 to 40% boys to girls. Another statistic that I remember was that it was more for babies, higher percentage of babies born in the fall and winter months.
Really?
Yeah. These are just some of the statistics. And that's the thing.
Probably because you're keeping them warmer.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Yeah,
because
kind of
the
makes
weather
sense.
is cooler. And
so he was a boy, he was born in the fall and winter months.
Yeah.
There were, I'm trying to think of what some of the other ones were. No known cause obviously had been established, still hasn't to this day. And then the sleeping position thing was something that came out afterwards. Oh, another one was babies who had moms that smoked or drank during the pregnancy were at a higher risk as well. And I didn't do either one of those things. Mm-hmm. So that wasn't something that factored in here. You see that he fits in a lot of these different categories, but I mean, he was healthy. All these children are healthy. I mean, it's not something that you plan for,
right,
or know about. And I think there were so many times when after that, I couldn't even be around a baby.
Yeah.
Not that I wasn't excited for other people who are having babies or anything. I was, but it was like, I just felt like it was gut wrenching to me to see this baby and this, family being so happy and all this stuff. And I was just happy for them, but I was just so incredibly sad. So poor Andrew again comes along, and, that kid, he wanted for nothing. He was constantly being doted on, and, he's kind of grown up being that firstborn almost. Mm-hmm. But we talk about this stuff within our family. There was not this thing where Zachary was part of the family and then gone and nobody talked about it, because it was really important for me that his memory stayed alive.
Sure.
And so even though my children never knew him, you would hear them, like I remember Jared when he was little going, "It's just not fair. It's just not fair. I should have another brother who can beat me up too." And, Andrew would say things like, "We should," when he was little, it's like, "We would have had bunk beds and been in the same room," and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's, I laugh about it now because I'm like, Andrew wouldn't be here. Zoe wouldn't be here. Jared wouldn't be here. I truly do not believe my children, my family, the way it is today would be the same family. It would be completely different. I wouldn't know any different, obviously, but I look at that as a gift.
Sure.
And so at the time, I didn't look at anything as a gift. I was angry. I was upset. I was sad. I mean, all the normal emotions that you feel. And I did not think about anything being a gift. I felt like I was just so wronged. And in a lot of ways, of course, I was.
Yeah.
But I truly believe that there were lessons that he was sent here to teach us.
Yes.
I really do. And one of them was I got a chance to be a mom, and I was a good mom, but I also was the mom that just was kind of like going with the flow. And so I think that by him leaving, and then I got to have it again, I got the other opportunity, I was able to be a mom again. And it's not that I didn't appreciate my child, I totally did, but I got another chance. And I was really excited about another chance to be a mom and to really put into play the things that I knew I was never going to be able to do with my firstborn. So that was one of the gifts that we had, I think, talked about a lot. Or at least I had talked about a lot. Also, I have this control thing.
You do?
No, I do. I'm joking around. Of course I do.
Yeah, me too.
I do. This is not something you can control.
Right.
You can't control what happens. I can't control destiny. I can't control God taking my child. I didn't have a choice. It had to happen. And I was pissed because I wasn't given a choice and my child was taken. And so I had to really find grace in that, and that I needed to be able to accept the things that were going on around me and understand that it was over time it was going to all make sense, I guess. And I will never know. I will never know until I see him again what happened and why it happened and why I was chosen to be his mom and why he was chosen to be my son. There's a reason. I don't know. But I think it has a lot to do with the children that I've raised. I mean, he was able to really give me a gift, when he came, and that gift continued with the kids I have. So that was an important thing that I needed to kind of accept. And I think the other thing too is, I'm in my 50s right now, and, we've got several years left, right? But I have this wonderful feeling in my heart that I have an angel waiting for me in whatever capacity I get there. And I'm going to heaven, by the way. Whatever capacity I get there, he will be there.
Yes, he will.
Yeah, he'll be there. And so, I have my dear friend Jen, who is the medium, and I've never really asked her to do anything where Zachary's concerned. Partially is because I'm, I don't know, kind of a little nervous about it, I guess, or haven't been able to accept it into my heart that I want to hear what's going on with him. But I'm ready to do that now, and I'm going to ask her to do that, and I know that it's going to be this wonderful experience, that I get to learn a little bit more about what's happening. But I just really look at it like his life was a precious gift, and it was one that we were chosen to be his parents for whatever reason. And I don't know what that reason is, but I do know that I'm very, very grateful for the experience. And I would never wish that experience on anybody, because it is one of the most awful things that you will ever run across. Losing anybody is awful, but in terms of your heart and how it breaks, but losing your child is like off the charts. So I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but I also know that there are a lot of things I'm stronger for because of it, and that I have lots of gifts that were provided to me because of it. So that's how I choose to walk away from it. And I feel like I'm in a really good place now. The fact that I can talk about it all these years later, he brings a smile to my face. And I don't like thinking about the pain or the heartbreak. I don't like thinking about it, but it was necessary in order to get to the place I am today. So that's kind of my story there.
Well, and that brings a better understanding for me, because to your point, when you're talking about people don't know what to say and how you are able to talk about this now, so many years later, I was, for me, not ever having experienced this, I'm like, are you sure this is okay? Are you sure you can do this? I'm like, I love you. This is big.
Yeah.
Are you sure you want to do this? And she's like, yeah, I got it. I got this.
Yeah.
This is and it's amazing personal gift, Jules, that you're sharing.
Yeah. Thank you. And I don't know. I mean, I really feel like everything is the way it's supposed to be. And I know that sounds a little bit like a platitude, but it's really kind of true. It's the way it's supposed to be. And he was just such an incredible gift. Such an incredible gift. And I feel very fortunate to have had the privilege to raise him for 4 months, you know.
As did he, I'm sure, of being with you for the 4 months. So I choose to kind of celebrate that now. Like I said, Valentine's Day, didn't do a lot with that day for years and years, which with the kids, I would do their Valentines and do all that stuff. But I didn't have my heart into a lot of that. They needed that stuff because that's what they were doing with school and everything. But I really look at it more like, you know, with his birthday and everything, more like a celebration. Because really him being here kind of altered everything about my adulthood. Right.
You know, and Brian's too. So we look at things very, very differently. Yeah. And, you know, I respect that he has his way and I have mine. And I think one of the takeaways for the people that are listening, like you were mentioning before, is that we're all going to run across people that have trauma or have loss in their lives, and everybody handles things so much differently. You don't necessarily have to be doing or saying anything. It's really more about just being there for the person.
Just presence.
Yeah, the presence. I'm telling you, that's all I needed. Yeah. I didn't need all of that other stuff. I just needed my people, you know, to be around me. And that was enough for me. Yeah. But I mean, like I said, everybody's different. They might need something else. And I'm really grateful for the couple that helped us, because honestly, I think it would have been a lot different if we didn't have them in our lives. You know, the resources that are out there for SIDS parents they're actually kind of robust. I mean, and now the SIDS percentages have decreased significantly. They're in the United States, one of the higher ones, believe it or not. And there's other countries that don't have as high rate of SIDS for whatever reason. I don't know. And I haven't been in the realm to be teaching any of that stuff in a long time. So I mean, I'm sure there's more out there, but I do have a part of my estate or my will or whatever is going to be going towards more of that research and support for people, because I feel so strongly that is such a needed thing for people. Yeah. So anyway, well, thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for sharing the story. And I think it's beautiful to be able to talk about Zachary, the first one that made you a mom.
He did.
Especially in light of it being Mother's Day.
I know. So. Well, I will definitely share like a couple pictures or something so we can post the pictures so you can see his little crazy head of hair and everything.
So cute.
Yeah, he was darn
awesome.
Cute. Yeah. So anyway, until next week, I guess.
Thanks everybody for joining us.
Yes.
It was definitely a pleasure.
Yeah, it felt good to get that out there.
I love that.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, everybody. Have a wonderful week.
All right.
Take it easy. Bye-bye.